Mesdames, messieurs, bonsoir. Est-ce que vous m'entendez correctement? Est-ce que vous êtes prêts pour les dingueries à venir? Aïe, 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 aïe. Ça va chier. Merci mon petit Azvect pour le follow. Ouah, il y a du monde direct. Ouh là 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 là, ça attendait ce live. Je vais vous faire une petite confidence. Je me suis échappé du boulot pour être là. On se met tranquille, on y retournera après. La hype est au maximum. Salut mon petit Seb. Ça fait plaisir de voir que tu as survécu à ce petit live Rocket League. Oh le Mila. Oh le Mila. Oh le Mila. Des nouveautés Nagash. Salut Julien. Hello Nico. Salut Grégory. Chico. Oh, on a l'élite. L'élite des assauts. Gwenzel, comment vas-tu? Sin, j'espère qu'ils vont annoncer des nouvelles figues pour les rouges sang. Ouais, sans aucun doute. Sans aucun doute. Est-ce que vous entendez la petite musique de fond C'est la musique de Warhammer TV. Normalement. Normalement, si je me suis pas trop loupé. Attendez, bougez pas. On va bouger ça tout de suite 2 secondes juste pour voir. Ok, c'est bon, on est prêt. Merci mon petit Namdar pour le follow. Oh, je suis trop chaud. Je suis trop chaud. Quand j'ai su qu'il y avait une soirée spéciale AOS, je me suis dit... Enfin, soirée. En après-midi. Miladin is in the place. Exactement. Salut Arceus, salut Lily, salut Alexis. Il y a du monde, ça fait plaisir. Ah, apparemment il y a de la modération. Alors je sais pas comment je fais pour accepter le message. Ah non, ils ont changé. Message d'une personne utilisant le chat pour la première fois. Salut Vectagen, salut Namdar. Écoute, au top. Au top, je dois avouer que j'en suis tout fébrile. J'ai hâte que ça démarre. J'ai hâte de voir ce qu'on va avoir en Sylvanette, très certainement. Avec l'histoire du petit scarabée. Avec peut-être les rumeurs parlent de Skaven. Peut-être l'annonce d'une boîte. Peut-être, je sais pas. Honnêtement, si on a des figues, je suis déjà content. J'ai pas trop vu d'ailleurs sur 40K hier. Est-ce que ce qui s'est passé sur 40K pourrait correspondre avec le scarabée? Je crois pas. C'est peut-être pour nous. Skaven ou émeute. Mon petit Yacha, j'espère qu'ils vont annoncer les 2 nouveaux BT. Salut les petits potes zigoto. C'est ici les kikis durs, c'est ici les kikis super durs. Les kikis tout durs. Ça sent les annonces pour toi. Oh, est-ce que ça sent les annonces pour moi? Ça sent peut-être les annonces pour Jean-Paul. Peut-être un peu plus que pour moi. Mais quel setup de fou, c'est incroyable. Il y a une figue de Sigmar qui a leak. Je ne te crois pas. Salut Gogo Skaven, salut Fred. Ah, Fred qui nous a aidé à nous qualifier ce week-end. Les Skaven, c'est une grosse annonce, donc ça sera annoncé la semaine prochaine. Ça y est, on spécule, on spécule. Très grand fan de YouTube, content de te voir ici, merci beaucoup, ça fait plaisir. Ça fait plaisir, ça fait plaisir. Probablement une boîte versus. Ouais, la boîte versus, on l'attend. Il y a le petit White Fang qui a balancé une souris mangeant des feuilles. Bon, maintenant on voit un scarabée. C'est peut-être pas complètement déconnant, quoi. Les archers volants Sylvanette, Skaven direct. Notre ami Jean-Paul Roux va être refait si c'est Sylvanette Skaven AVC direct. Salut, tu viens de faire concurrence au Show Games Workshop? Ah non, en fait, nous on fait le live. Et par contre, c'est eux qui vont nous retransmettre, tu vois. Merci CDA Studio. Ça fait plaisir, les gars. Skaven a peut-être des annonces de BT automnal. Bonjour à tous. Alors, on va essayer. Ah, Warhammer TV Stream Warhammer. C'est bon. Je suis sur le bon live. On va tester. Vous verrez que normalement, j'ai tout prévu. Je devrais disparaître ce petit fond. Attention magie, vous allez voir ça. Je vais vous le montrer parce que j'en suis quand même assez fier. Waouh! Allez, on va faire comme ça. C'est parti. C'est parti! Transpiration sous les dessous de bras. Transpiration partout. Luminette, Nange Deck. Une lubule. Qu'est-ce qu'une lubule? Quel professionnel. Twitch en blanc. Alors je peux me justifier, c'est parce que je suis sur un Chrome en navigation privée. Donc c'est les paramètres par défaut. C'est bon, ça passe. Donc là on peut voir le chat qui s'énerve, Skaven Hype. Age of War Old World. Salut Blob Dylan. Skaven ou pas Skaven? Franchement Skaven, je pense. Skaven, Sylvanette, tout ce qu'il faut. Tout ce qu'il faut pour s'amuser. C'est de la sorcellerie, change esprit. Change fond de décor, change tout. On va couper ces merdes là. Comment on coupe ces merdes? Voilà. On a coupé la pollution visuelle. Navigation privée, c'est une technique de Skaven. Non mais attends, en fait, ce qu'il faut savoir, c'est que je suis en train de retransmettre l'audio de mon ordi. Donc je connais les petits malins si je suis sur une navigation standard qui vont s'amuser à m'envoyer des MP pour que ça fasse ding 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 toutes les 2 secondes. Je connais. Bon dis donc, qu'est-ce qu'il regardait juste avant le Sam? Il regardait rien, j'étais en plein travail. Wag, exactement. Hey le Sam. Sam, tu penses quoi des 4 BT annoncés avant celui du chaos? Tu veux des pronostics, c'est ça? Est-ce qu'on se met ça en grand avec une musique hypante? Déjà, première chose, est-ce que vous entendez bien au niveau du son la musique de fond là? Ouais, ça a l'air pas mal. J'ai les volumes qui... On a l'air bien. Un peu fort. Baisser un poil. Tout le monde sera content. Salut, Séraphon. Ouh là là. Ah oui, carrément. Tu penses à du Séraphon. Bon, ça me paraît un peu osé, hein, Séraphon. Séraphon est sorti, c'était le week-end avant le French War Game Day. Donc il est sorti le... Allez, à une semaine près, le 7 mars 2020. Il a 2 ans, mais je pense qu'il y a plus urgent. Mince, on a un live sauvage de Sam. Enfin, tu peux pas me dire sauvage. Le seul et unique moment où je l'annonce. Ah, c'est plus de la bonne humeur, là. C'est de la hype inconsidérée. Salut Sam, on te croisera au French War Game Day. Normalement, finger crossed, je serai là au French War Game Day, ouais. Est-ce qu'on se met ça? Ah, on est bien comme ça, petite ambiance sylvanette, on est un petit peu dans les bois, vous voyez, j'ai tout prévu. Ah là là, merci Static Rubs, merci Malazar2, merci Mathieu de Entre Jeux Studio. Donc tu me diras, Grégory, si tu veux un pronostic? Un petit prono. Alors, j'ai pas la timeline en tête de ce qu'ils ont annoncé, mais je crois qu'il y a 1 ou 2 destrus. On va voir ça. C'est quoi le programme? Alors, le programme, c'est que pour l'instant, vous avez juste le son du stream de Warhammer TV. Et dans quelques instants, quand ça démarrera, je passerai en tout petit dans un coin, et vous aurez l'image. S'il y a des Skaven stylés, ça sera peut-être ma prochaine armée. Pour le moment, les vieilles figues me freinent un peu. Alors Skaven, c'est vrai que c'est particulier parce que c'est une gamme qui est très vieille et c'est une armée, on les connaît là, les mecs des bas mondes qui se réveillent de leur grotte et qui sortent. Il n'y a qu'à voir, dès qu'il y a une vidéo sur les Skaven qui sort, c'est un massacre. Donc si jamais ils sortent une nouvelle gamme de figues Skaven, ça va être terrible. Luminette Zench? Non, pas Luminette. Pas possible. Nickel. Oh là là, j'ai du retard. C'est parfait. Korn, Gloomogor. Et pour l'ordre, Séraphon ou la 3e branche Luminette. C'est vrai que Luminette, on attend une suite. Hein. Alors, il y a déjà des archers dans la mort. Mais non, tu verras, je suis en retard. Je suis désolé. Je vois que vous êtes tous autant hypés que moi. Alex Dragon. Salut pour moi. Il y aura des cos comme BT Order. C'est vrai qu'il commence à se faire vieux ce BT. C'est vrai. Yo les gens, yo Sam, vive AOS et vive Alariel et surtout vive Nagash. Je pense qu'il y a moyen que tu sois assez heureux avec Alariel aujourd'hui. On va voir ça. Aïe 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 ses cheveux. Et là là, j'ai fait au top. Oh Lone Wolf, David, comment vas-tu? On se revoit que sur Tales of the Rift du coup. Aïe. On BT à 3 mois seulement, 2 destrus, 1 ordre, 1 chaos. Je suis très mauvais en prono. Honnêtement, je te dirais Sylvanette, Skaven. Ça, c'est à cause des petites annonces Ligue de Whitefang. Ouais, on va mettre ça, histoire d'être un peu dans l'ambiance. Et après, je te dirais Ogre et Gloomspite. Sauf si nouvelle armée. Mais ça me paraît... Les rumeurs parlaient pas spécialement d'une nouvelle armée destrue, donc j'y crois pas trop. Peu importe ce qui se passe, j'attends le prochain White Dwarf pour jouer Slanesh correctement. Il y a des trucs à faire. Salut, salut Asran, salut Messire Garag, salut Raf Santa, on veut de l'Ogor, exactement. Ça va, arrêter jusqu'où... Ouh là 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 là. Cette énorme chatte sur ton visage, te faudrait un layout clean. Eh oui, oui, oui. Mais c'était pas mal. C'était pas mal. En attendant. Mais c'est vrai que c'est pas très convivial ce fond là. Je crois que je vais baisser. Comme ça, vous verrez la superbe vue de chez moi. Oh là là. On se remettra dans l'ambiance juste après. Est-ce qu'on la voit? Non, on voit pas la boîte Warhammer Age of Reckoning. Ça fait longtemps les luminettes, les choix sont limités. Kayalta, merci pour le follow. Raccoon, merci pour le follow. Bien le bonjour, Volgir, et bienvenue pour cette première fois sur le chat. Merci Fred Marquez pour le follow. Oh là, il y a trop de monde. Salut mon petit Lucien. Splendide tes glooms bretoniens. Don Pincelito, ah oui, ah oui. C'est du Sylvanette sûr. Je pense nouvelle armée ordre. Tu crois? Nouvelle armée de l'ordre? Je sais pas, j'y crois pas trop. Ça me paraît un peu ambitieux, une nouvelle armée order. Je sais pas. Hello la Suisse. Comment ça, hello la Suisse? Chez Air Suisse. J'ai fait ma première victoire mineure avec Slanesh sans aide d'aider. Je suis fier de mes progrès. C'est vrai que c'est pas mal parce que Slanesh, ils ont ramassé. Hein. Merci Vian66, merci Black Cherry.
Hello everybody and welcome. We are delighted to be with you once again for this second day of Warhammer Fest Online 2022. And today we're going to look at Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I'm Adam Folk, I'm joined by Eddie Eccles, and we can't wait to get stuck into it.
Yeah, we had loads of really cool stuff yesterday for Warhammer 40,000. If you missed that, if you've been hiding in a cave on Mars somewhere, you can go back and check it all out on the Warhammer community website or watch it back on Twitch. But today we are journeying into the mortal realms for some exciting stuff.
Bon, apparemment, ils ont de l'exciting stuff.
We've got some books we're going to tell you about. There's a few kind of left field things in the mix there as well, so it should be good.
There's some cool stuff to show. I would also think on Mars, you would be pretty well connected. You'd have the new sphere to connect to. You could sort of get
It depends
involved.
which cave you're in. Some of them they dig pretty
Fair.
Bon allez, on a assez attendu, balancez la sauce.
Many of you are on Mars, but we are joined by, last I looked, it was something in the region of 11,000 people in the chat, all hyped and ready for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. If you are tuning in, please tell us where you're coming in from. It's lovely to be joined by so many people.
Bon là, ils sont en train de choper gentiment le chat, à nous demander. Tu peux mettre ta miniature sur celle.
Colorado, New York,
ah, je peux pas.
Australia, Portugal, Loch Ness, that's pretty awesome. Tokyo.
Ils sont en train de choper gentiment le chat en demandant d'où on vient, etc. etc.
There's no real place called Mordheim, is there? I didn't just like
a
cast
tous la même chose.
Maybe.
Trêve de clavardage, les amis.
Presage some ill omens. New Hampshire, actual Hampshire. South Yorkshire, Madrid, so many people
Oh,
tuning in
profitez,
from
c'est
so
leur
many
merch
places.
officiel.
Thank you
Le
all so
t-shirt
much
est insane.
coming to choose to spend
Ah, ils sont
an
super,
hour
bah
or so
oui.
with Eddie and myself.
Ah oui, j'avais
as we
pas
take you on this
vu.
tour of all things Warhammer with a very specific Warhammer Age of Sigmar theme.
Allez.
Before we begin, we had a pretty good time yesterday. Eddie, what was your highlight to take away from day one of Warhammer Fest?
Et ils vont nous faire un petit highlight de ce qui s'est passé hier. C'est cool parce que je n'ai rien suivi.
I'm pretty excited about the Demon Prince. So I think over the course of my hobby journey, I've had about 7 Demon Princes in various different incarnations in my armies.
Ouais, apparemment il y a 7 tunings de Prince Démon. J'ai vu rapidement, mais j'ai pas suivi. J'attends toujours mon petit Kawanda. Merci RG.
For me, having spent a lot of the day.
Il y a des Bretons qui s'excitent dans leur chat, il faut respecter les traditions. Comme dans toute manifestation, il y a 2 drapeaux qui sont obligatoires. Je dirais pas lesquels. N'importe quel pays, n'importe quelle fête, n'importe quelle manif, n'importe quel machin, il y a 2 drapeaux qui reviennent tout le temps.
Normally, you're quite in the loyalist camp of.
Yeah, but I think yesterday was quite a celebration of
Celui de l'OM.
bit mad and evil.
Quite spiky.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I super
On
like
était
the
potes en
Honkin
plus.
Pioneer bike as well.
Oh, tu
I'm
peux pas me dire
getting
ça, tu peux
quietly
pas me dire ça.
super excited for the arrival of the Leagues of
Mais non, celui de Nagash.
Today is the day to get excited about Age of Sigmar.
Allez.
Things in the Mortal
Ils sont
Realms.
excités de nous
If
montrer
you're
les
watching
nouveautés
along at
AOS,
home
les
and you're
gars.
currently embarking on an Age of Sigmar project, or have just completed one, or just want to shout out your favorite army in all caps, then please do let us know in the chat.
Ooh,
Bon,
yeah, go
apparemment,
on.
faut spammer,
I can see already that
sous Black
Ratman
Gravelord dans
are
le
getting
chat.
quite a lot of hype.
Merci
People
Alsakan, c'est
maybe
adorable.
have
Merci
looked
pour
at
ton
the banners
Prime.
maybe behind us and are inferring some things. So yeah, maybe the Ratmen will get a look in. Is there anything you're excited to see? I know the thing that you're hyped for. Do you want to drop?
Est-ce que vous trouvez pas ça inquiétant que le mec ait quand même un t-shirt luminette aujourd'hui, quoi? Alors soit c'est pour compenser le fait qu'il soit pas là, soit il a une mauvaise nouvelle à nous annoncer officiellement.
Yeah, I don't think I want to hint too much. Have you got any Age of Sigmar projects yourself on the go?
Well, so Age of Sigmar projects, not really. I did do a nice tidy up of my Warhammer Age of Sigmar shelf.
C'est une mauvaise nouvelle quand même, des luminettes en rave, non?
Rearranged, and I'm trying to work out how to essentially fill the gaps. So I built.
Ça serait bien.
I want to say his name's Karazai, the red
Blasphème.
dragon. And I haven't painted it. Oh yeah, it looks so good. And I haven't painted him yet. And so as I was rearranging the shelf, I was like,
Non, pas eux, pas eux. Franchement, on les a assez vus.
That'd be pretty good. So it's on the cards, but I've been very much caught up in the Dark Millennium.
Ce serait peut-être temps de leur dire qu'ils ont assez parlé, les copains. Pourquoi tu cherches à t'en débarrasser de tes luminettes? Non, ça prend un peu de place de la vitrine, c'est cool. Pour l'instant, j'en suis là, moi.
To go through and paint. There's quite a lot of detail on them, actually. They're absolutely glorious models, but
yeah,
if you got infantry heavy, there's a lot of details to fill in.
I imagine
you have to paint two
if,
lots of faces for every
if you were inclined to speed paint them, you'd get away with it.
Yeah,
incroyable.
I've seen how
it's
you
not how
paint.
I roll.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not how I roll.
And we were both saying beforehand that.
En plus, je l'ai monté en une demi-heure max. Pas de wish, pas de wish, pas de wish.
My daughter has expressed an interest in playing.
Ça m'arrangerait financièrement. Ah oui, c'est un autre problème, c'est pas la hype là.
Right.
C'est le self-control.
It is 5 minutes past.
Héros sous Lord of
My
Change.
schedule says at 5 minutes.
Il y aura
past,
tout.
We should play.
Celui-ci, c'est un Lord of Change.
Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be right back after this.
Oh, ça y est.
Third watch. Shh. Someone will hear you. There's ratmen in these.
C'est une voix de Sylvanette.
Ratmen come in packs. We'll hear them a mile off. I heard there ain't such a thing
But
as ratmen. Then what do you think the regiment's been after? Shh. General's gone mad. We're chasing shadows.
Ouh, c'est du clan Eshin, ça? Oi, aïe. Stop! Stab! Kill. Oh là. Mighty Scaven, Lord Master of Stab Kill. Ah, vous sentez le mec qui va avoir une règle de cochon contre les héros là?
A new Death Master for the Skaven.
On dirait ma belle-mère.
So, as you say, this is a brand new hero character for the Skaven. Deathmaster has been an iconic part of Warhammer lore for, I think, as long as I remember.
Est-ce que ça serait pas le digne descendant de...
So, for those of you who don't know, Deathmaster is the title given to like expert assassins of the clan Eshin of the Skaven. These are hero killers extraordinaire who will
en tout cas, il est super
find
canon.
their enemy heroes, leaders, wizards on the battlefield or elsewhere and basically stab them with a big, scary poisoned dagger and or use scary shuriken to kill their prey. They're the most lethal warriors in the Skaven army.
Awesome. And we were saying just before we came live, actually, that possibly the Death Master's assassin mold,
un petit peu pestilent, l'arme empoisonnée.
Is one of the coolest
sent l'aréole.
things about the Skaven, and they've been very well served over the years. And this one is incredible. Just oozes character sort of sneaking down over some broken masonry.
Ouais, t'as pas loupé grand chose, t'inquiète pas. Juste un petit héros Skaven.
A prehensile tail with a stabby bit on the end.
Yeah, I think he's going to fit really nicely if you have picked up the latest season of Warhammer Underworlds and you want to add some of those new Skaven into your army as well.
Instabail.
Will sit very neatly alongside them. They've got that.
En fait, il rappelle un peu les poses
on the basis of them,
des filles de Underworld, des trucs vachement plus dynamiques, vachement plus modernes.
Sigmarite scenery.
Ça fait plaisir de les voir arriver vraiment sur AOS, quoi.
You know, a city or a township that's been destroyed by the Skaven or left into ruin. The idea of your army kind of crawling across this ruined city is quite fun and quite thematic, and lots of the Skaven models themselves actually have bits of masonry and stuff that they've kind of cobbled together, which is quite a fun theme, I think, to pull the army's aesthetic together.
Yeah, and I've got to
Donc,
just
je parle
be
un
honest,
peu, j'ai écouté, j'ai pris en milieu, mais il parle un peu de la nouvelle esthétique, on va dire des Skaven.
Continue to amaze me with how sort of lifelike and realistic things like the drapery look, all that use of negative space. I can only imagine how that kit's going to go together to enable you to create these things where you can see sort of the gaps in between, like the hood and the robes all dropping together. It's an incredible
c'est des modèles qui sont vachement aérés, vachement aériens, vachement dynamiques. En gros, il parle un petit peu de tous les espaces qu'il y a. Il est complet, ils viennent de le dire, Skaven Banderole, très violente.
Some lovely details on it as well. I really like the
je sens qu'il y a du raton qui va partir dans les armées.
Of the Skaven assassins itself, just dripping with ooze. So I think if you're a painter and you're looking for a model to kind of show off, you can see already that the heavy metal team has done an incredible job on some of the metallics and things on this. Look at things like the way the
c'est vrai qu'il y a tout, c'est un peu comme il dit, c'est un peu un modèle.
Skaven are painted beautifully, but
ouais, des modèles quasiment qui peuvent servir pour des concours. La fille est magnifique.
It's not your centerpiece. It's not going to be like your Thanquil or your.
Ce qui est incroyable, moi, c'est la dague. Je la trouve splendide, vraiment splendide. Ça se demandait le mec qui a des mains comme ça.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty exciting for Skaven players, but it is not the only thing that Skaven players should be excited about.
No, so they've got a brand new Chaos Battle Tome is on the way for the Skaven. We knew that a Chaos Battle Tome was coming. We can confirm today that it will indeed be for the Skaven. So inside this, you've got all the things you'd expect. So that Deathmaster obviously has all his new rules are in there, along with the new Warhammer Underworld's Warband as well. So there's
c'est un peu dommage la cover.
Eshin get a bit more of the battle tome than they maybe used to, but all of the various different ways that you can build a Skaven army are covered. So
ouais, donc ils en disent pas trop pour l'instant, hormis dire que ce héros sera dans le BT.
There's a lot of
Quel
really
scoop.
good stuff in there. Got some great centerpiece kits.
Yeah, totally. In terms of the battle tome itself, huge fan of that iconic image of the Screaming Bell. And here we have a Gracie clinging to the Screaming Bell. It's just absolutely fantastic. And that bell tolling sort of resonates all the way through the lore
les
of the
fans
Skaven
de Screaming Bell seront très heureux de voir sa couverture.
Yeah, the Skaven are kind of one of the those armies that have made the transition out of the world that was into.
Le livre a l'air super balèze.
Not exactly unscathed, but they've kind of retained the culture that they had. So there's this kind of really rich history and tapestry of how their faction fits together. And in terms of how they play in the game, they have a really kind of wacky way of playing, which is that quite a lot of their stuff is high risk, high reward. So you've got lots of things that can potentially do vast amounts of damage to your opponent. And if they go right and your Machiavellian schemes come together properly, you can kind of sit there cackling away as the enemy army falls apart. But sometimes, you roll a few ones or.
Bon voilà, en gros ils disent qu'on va garder l'ADN de Skaven, c'est-à-dire être capable de mettre des dégâts colossaux. Et puis là il dit en gros, voilà faire courte, se faire exploser soi-même sans avoir besoin de l'adversaire quoi. Donc un peu les mécaniques de Scryer, de prise de risque.
Très bien qu'ils gardent ça.
Yeah, so you can definitely lean really heavily into the different aspects of Skaven if you want to. So you can lean into like an Eshin force if you want to, or you want to do an army that's all about the kind of warp technology, or you want to really heavily.
Je sais pas si c'est une bonne question. Là, c'est un visuel numérique le bouquin. Je sais. C'est un petit peu compliqué à déterminer.
Or you can just revel in the full glory of the Horned
Là, le détourage a l'air propre. On dirait c'est peut-être une photo. Hein. C'est dur de dire comme ça.
I'm all about ninja rats. That's mega.
So I've never collected a Skaven army of my own, but when I
dabbled,
I was just collecting all the things with big guns on. So Stormfiends with Gatling guns, and Rattling guns with Gatling guns, and
that army does pretty well.
Bon allez. Du coup, je pense qu'on peut dire que les pronostics de White Fang étaient justes.
Visually,
de savoir Sylvanet Skaven.
Sort of the mad engineering aspect of it, the idea of warp block engineers are sort of cobbling together crazy things and then firing.
Donc il parle de Scryer, en gros on va garder les ingénieurs coups, etc. Je pense qu'on s'y attendait, on aimerait bien choper des infos sur éventuellement le plan Eshin.
The kind of swarms of chaff and infantry and things, but there's also this kind of mad scientist kind of aesthetic that lives in the background, and there's also this kind of like warrior elite
capable de faire de gros dégâts, mais on précise pas de quel côté de la table. Ouais, il y a un côté qui prend cher et l'autre qui prend un peu cher.
compelling
C'est ça, un Skaven,
faction for Age of Sigmar.
Il y en a un qui douille et l'autre, ça va.
There's a lot of things to like about
Mais
it.
sens non
I
garanti.
totally
quoi.
agree. A little shout out to, I've missed the name, sorry, it flew past, but somebody said
Donnez-moi
hello
des
from
arbres.
Bolivia. We have lots of Warhammer Age of Sigmar fans here. I don't think I've ever seen Bolivia fly past me in the chat before, so
Hello, Bolivia.
thank you for joining us from Bolivia. Right, so we've had a little bit of Skaven, but that is by no means the only thing that we're going to reveal or talk about today.
Ah, ils ont pas
How
fini.
about we come back after this short video here?
J'entendais les oiseaux là.
Life flows through the realms once more, and where there is growth, we will spring forth to defend it, in Alariel's name!
Oh! Oh! Ouh, mais c'est des nouvelles unités ça! Vous avez vu, c'est Victor qui pointe son banquier là. Oh! Oh là 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 là. Bon. Bon. Il y en a qui ont été plus
Well,
gâtés que d'autres.
some
Hein.
exciting new things to see for the Sylvaneth. Eddie,
Ah, regardez
what
la
do we
pique
make
dans le
of
fond.
this?
So yes, so the Sylvaneth have been with us since.
Elle est
the
incroyable, le
start
socle,
of
il a l'air
Warhammer Age of
énorme.
Sigmar,
Ah,
and
le petit,
they've had a large
porte-peste là au
release
sol
near
là.
the beginning of the first edition of Age of Sigmar, but we haven't really seen them had a major range expansion for a little while. But that changes very soon because the largest influx of reinforcements to the Sylvaneth
incroyable.
is on its way, and there's some pretty special models in the mix. So if
Ouais,
we
bon
kick
courage
off
pour
with
les lignes de vue,
Lady
par
of
contre, hein.
Vines, this is a character that may be familiar to
Il va falloir la
those
planquer,
people who
celle-là.
followed the story of the Realmgate Wars.
Yep,
She was one of
absolutely.
the
je vois la
handmaidens
branche.
of Alariel. She's actually one of the first Sylvaneth characters we ever met in the Mortal Realms. And if you follow the story
Pourquoi
of the
j'ai vendu
Realmgate
mes
Wars,
Sylvanettes?
you may
Ouais, il est
remember that she
incroyable. Hein.
sacrificed
Mais vous avez vu
herself in
le
order to bring
l'archer là?
about the
Il est
rebirth
splendide
of
aussi.
Alariel and the kind of the rebirth
Oh
of
là
life
là
in
là
the
là
Mortal
là
Realms,
là
basically. But Alariel is the goddess of life, so she was able to resurrect her most loyal handmaiden, and thanks to Alariel, we get this beautiful model.
She is quite literally.
Donc
if you've
apparemment,
read the
ça
lore,
aurait été une bestiole
Alariel's
qui aurait
right
été ramenée à la vie par Alariel, etc.
So, yeah, that's
Victor
pretty
va faire
awesome.
péter
And
ton
she mixes
PL.
and mingles
Bien.
with the Hallow Knights, which are my particular homeboys in the Mortal Realms.
Docteur
So,
Octopus,
I'm very
carrément.
excited for this.
Je suis
Yeah,
ruiné.
Yeah, she battles alongside Gardas the Steel Soul, I think, in
Yep,
some of
that's
the Mortal Realms stories. She's a particular nemesis of Nurgle because there's a huge battle in the Realm of
Ouais,
Life, the
ça, on
War of
s'y
Life,
attend.
where
Alors,
the
qu'est-ce qu'il nous
forces of
montre
Nurgle are
de
trying to
dos?
overtake
Ouais,
that realm,
ce
and
petit,
the
petit
forces
look-up.
of the Sylvaneth
Ouais, ça fait
definitely
plaisir.
don't want it to happen, and
Honnêtement,
you can see a plague bearer on the base there.
c'est une lady parce qu'elle a la branche qui
rooted
dépasse.
out, a chaos literally rooted out
On
of the
voit
realms
pas
there.
bien.
In terms of her
Allez, on
abilities
va
on the
pouvoir jouer des
battlefield,
petites
she
fées
sits
fragiles
somewhere in the same
dans les
region
armées
as
sylvanettes.
Striker
Oh,
in
fragile,
your Sylvaneth
fragile,
force, so she is a much more powerful than something
Je
like
crois
an
que les bestioles
infantry
sur
character,
Scarabée là.
maybe not quite on the same level as Alariel herself. So she's like a medium monster level
Il y en a qui ont des annonces à
hero.
faire passer dans le chat.
She's a spellcaster. She can summon units to the battle and reinforce your army. She's got some buffs to nearby units, and she can handle herself in a fight as well. So she's like a very useful character to have. She's got all sorts of different tools to help you out in the battle.
Bon, apparemment, c'est une boîte à
And then
outils.
from a miniature perspective as well, I think the Sylvaneth range.
Ce que je vous laisse
is one of
imaginer,
the
si
most
c'est une fille qui
striking
devient
visually
aussi
of the
importante
entire
que le
Sigmar
Warsong,
range, but she has got
ça
some
va envoyer
lovely
du
little
pâté,
touches on her in terms of you've got some little spites and things in the cloak that she's got. The weapon is quite
Ouais, la
impressive.
cape
Just
est
details
magnifique.
on
On voit
the
pas,
model,
mais les
just
petits
amazing,
on voit, mais.
Like first off the bat, and it's already
petit
been
crâne.
referenced
C'est vrai
both in the
qu'il y a
chat
même un
and by
petit crâne
yourself,
dans
but it's
le cou.
the foot on the sort of back of the neck of a plague bearer is just stunning.
Même c'est super beau ce qu'ils ont fait ici au niveau de. Ça sort du cadre, etc. Ça donne vachement de dynamisme au truc. Ouais, ça pète.
Sort of the battle in the realm of life. And then for me, there's things like the
Les Skaven, c'est léger en
woven
termes de
into the
nouveautés,
cape,
mais les Sylvanettes sont à la fête.
sort of cape of
Ouais, ils
vines
sont
or
les
leaves or
Sylvanettes,
hide
c'est
or
pas
whatever it is
mal.
down her back. But one of the
Ça fait quoi, du
skulls
coup,
is
si on
not like
compte,
the
il y a-
others if you have a good look.
On a vu
And
au
then
moins
obviously
une
you've got
nouvelle unité
spikes sort of
d'archers,
wiggling around in there. There's just so much to
une
love.
unité de mecs sur
Once again, the
Scarabée.
miniatures design team just continue to blow us away with these
Elle.
intricate details, which
On n'avait pas un autre au
You
début?
could paint this with Citadel contrast paints, and you could probably have the model done in.
Mais déjà, ça veut dire
like
qu'on
an
va peut-être
afternoon.
avoir une chance
You
que
could
dans la Dual Box,
lavish
il n'y ait
time
pas
like the
que
metal painters have.
de nouveaux
You
héros.
have some incredible
Après, j'ai un doute quand même sur le fait qu'ils mettent les scarabées dans la
I think what
Dual
I like
Box s'il y en a
about
une.
it, and a lot of the Sylvaneth range is the kind of juxtaposition between the elegant weaponry of like the sort of elven root and things like the urn that carried in the back, and the really spiteful kind of visceral natural look of the
En plus,
face.
on va avoir
So this
l'occasion
isn't
de
a
fendre
friendly
du Nurgle au
character. They
passage.
might fight for the forces of order, but you know she hates.
Ah, il y avait une
interlopers
sorte de
into
petit
the-
gars,
into
ouais.
her realm. You can see her cloak is full of the skulls.
Ouais,
of people
non,
who've
je pense
maybe
pas la
accidentally
Lady, peut-être
trodden
pas dans la
on
Dual
flower
Box,
by
mais
mistake. That sort of thing. She's not your friend unless you
Bon.
are literally on the forces of the.
on est pas mal là déjà. Hein.
But she will fight
Ça
tooth
fait
and
plaisir
nail
de
to
revoir
kill her.
vraiment
Fantastic.
des
Of course, she
sorties,
was
des
by no
annonces.
means the
Ah
only
voilà.
thing we
Oh
saw
là
in
là
that
là là
video
là
that
là.
sort of teased all these things. Tell me
Sont
more about
splendides.
Gossamed Archers.
So this is a new unit for the Sylvaneth, picking up that kind of spite theme that we've seen a little bit with some
Ah,
of the
c'est lui,
things
là,
like the Revenants
c'est lui,
that
le
live in
Victor,
the
là.
Sylvaneth army, and it's a brand new unit type we haven't seen before, and one that gives
Ils
a
sont
really interesting new
incroyables.
option basically to
Les gars, je
Sylvaneth
vous
collectors
annonce,
and
je
players.
commence une armée
So from
sylvanette
a lore
demain.
perspective, this is a unit that can
Ah, ils sont
fly around
splendides.
the battlefield. That you can see on the back of their, you can't quite see from these shots, but on their back they basically have grubs that cling on and fly
fantastic.
them around. So there's insects on the back there that are helping them kind of move
Gossamed
swiftly, and they can dart
Archer,
between
c'est des
trees.
espèces du bois,
From
les
a gaming
scarabées,
perspective,
je les
they
vois
give
bien
you a
jouer par
fast
3.
moving,
Ouais, ouais, ça a l'air de la bonne
solid
élite.
archer unit that can kind of
Dans mes veines,
get
c'est
to where
Don
you need them to
Kinselito
be
qui
and
va
put
être
damage
content.
onto enemy units.
Ah, ils sont splendides, hein.
And they're just a really,
Splendide.
really flexible, useful unit that can kind of harass enemy, claim objectives quickly, that they move quickly, they can
Ouais,
get
ça a
out
l'air
of trouble
de,
quite
du
easily.
descriptif qu'il en fait, c'est des unités de
Their
harcèlement
bows
très
fire,
mobiles.
Arrows that are
Peut-être un petit peu comme les Kinérailles en fait.
shatter and turn into bugs.
Après,
that
c'est des corps de
swarm and dig into
tri-revenance
enemies,
hein,
so
ou de
they-
spite.
They
J'ai du mal à
hit pretty
différencier. Je
hard,
crois que
even though
c'est
they're
plutôt
they're carrying
tri-revenant.
what looks to be
Donc on peut
arrows,
imaginer de
bows
la
and
TP un
arrows,
peu comme les
they're
tri.
actually enchanted with the power of life magic, and they do lots of
Ouais,
damage
tri.
to stuff when they hit.
Fantastic. Those bugs on the back apparently are
Bon allez,
called
montrez-nous les petits
Zeppelin
scarabées là.
Spites. And yeah, they've got this sort of
Ah, ils sont
symbiotic
incroyables.
sort of relationship going on. So the Zeppelin Spites will carry them on. That's a really nice detail.
Yeah.
isn't
Et
it?
donc les
There's quite a
scarabées,
lot of
c'est
the
des
Sylvaneth
petites
range is
bestioles
kind of
qu'on a
moving
vues sur
in the
l'image de la
direction of
preview.
having,
Les mythes.
the spites and the kind of elven and the tree spirits mixed together much more. And you saw it originally, obviously, with Alariel herself, who's riding around on a great big Wardroth beetle.
12 pouces,
But
4 plus
the
4 plus
idea
moins
of
1, 1.
insect-like creatures mixed in amongst
Ouh là là,
that
il y a du
existing
sel
elven
Night Hunt
aesthetic,
là.
It's becoming more and more prominent, as we'll see with the next unit.
There we go. We've moved on. So what are
Wow.
Spite Rider Lancers?
So this is another unit which gives Sylvaneth a
Ouais, ils
really
sont canons,
different way to approach putting an army together, or putting a collection together for Age of Sigmar. So these are the cavalry, the
Très,
shock cavalry
très,
of the
très
Sylvaneth forces, and they're riding
Peut-être même plusieurs
spikes
options
again,
d'équipement, en
which
lance, en arc.
look a little bit like
Sont
kind of
magnifiques.
great big dragonflies. But
Je vais
these
mettre
are
mes
kind of
Night Hunt
bigger
et
than
lunettes de
horses.
côté.
This is a hard-hitting cavalry unit for the Sylvaneth. They,
Okay.
they work a
Donc-
little bit like something like the maybe the Achillean eels for something like the Ideneth.
Sure.
They're in that kind of
Okay.
ballpark of how hard they hit, but they're very fast.
Donc en gros, c'est des unités d'impact de cavalerie ultra agressive
the
type
bit of the enemy army
murène.
they need, and they give the Sylvaneth army something that it was sort of lacking, which was you had lots of durable troops. You
Et
had
avec une armure comme ça,
pretty
j'espère
solid
que tu as une save à
spellcasters
3.
and regenerating abilities, but you didn't really have anything that could like
Merci
get
mon
places
petit
fast
Zarkan
and
pour
do
le
the
follow, je
damage
suis désolé,
where
j'en ai
you
loupé
really needed it,
beaucoup.
unless you were kind of teleporting through trees and stuff. These guys
Ah,
don't need to.
J'ai
to do
entendu
that. They
teleporting
can
tree.
zip across the battlefield very quickly and threaten huge parts of the battle.
Yeah, that
Ah,
sounds
c'est des
great.
grillons.
There's a few things worth talking about. One for me that stands out, and actually somebody in the chat has picked up on it. Spruce and Bruce says loves the echo of the Warhammer Fantasy Battle Warhawk Riders of old.
Ah, c'est incroyable. Là. On est quand même
There's a lot
gâtés
of
sur
shared
AOS
heritage with the Sylvaneth
en
and,
termes de
you know,
nouvelles
the,
unités.
what else was
À
the world
chaque
that was.
fois, franchement,
And,
les sculptures sont magnifiques.
That's
C'est
a
ce que
very
je
strong image.
trouve
You can
vraiment
imagine
depuis
these
Luminette.
sort of zooming in between
Il y a
sort of
vraiment un
artwork
cap
and
qui est passé.
whatever.
Quoi.
It's
Bon,
a
si
really
on s'arrête là,
great
est-ce qu'on est content déjà? C'est les trucs
visual
provençales.
to use. And alongside that, these horned helmets are really.
Ah bah voilà.
Perhaps whisk me away from the horned helmets, but they have a really strong sort of visual identity. You can
Ouah, ils sont
imagine
trop beaux.
these as almost
Merci Troll pour
appearing
ton
as sort of
prime,
frightening
ça
creatures
régale,
like
merci
mythology,
infiniment.
You know, if you're trespassing on the domains and these things come herring out the woods at you with terrifying bugs the size of a camel and a master rider on the back, stuff of horror.
Well, they also tie in really nicely with things like the Arch Revenant, which you've got
C'est beau,
currently in the
c'est beau, c'est beau,
Sylvaneth
c'est
army.
beau.
So there's
Après les
lots of
Morsards,
things
les
that tie
Dichiennes.
these units
Ouais, c'est un
back
peu
into
l'idée,
the
hein.
rest of the Sylvaneth, and actually
Là, c'est les mecs avec les longues lances.
Because of these new units, you've got your archer unit, you've got your cavalry units. You can now build a Sylvaneth army in ways that you just couldn't do before. So you can have a really fast cavalry.
Vous imaginez, vous faites une armée de Sylvaneth, vous mettez. Allez. Franchement, même s'il y a moyen de dépasser Battle Line, imaginez. Warsong, éventuellement un héros à l'arrière si on a de la place, full cavalerie, des curnotes derrière.
There is a really nice thing about the aesthetic of those elves as well, because like some of
je suis bien d'accord, Belette. Très d'accord.
Some of the kind of the racial memory almost of the ancient elves.
Vive le transport, va falloir remonter.
Captured in the Sylvaneth, and you can see that in the style of the weapons and stuff that they carry and the helmets and things.
Un sécateur attaque-tranche. Eux c'est attaque-tranche, les autres c'est kill-all.
A little bit of dark elf. Lots of kind of nods back to the world that was, which is really nice if you remember that stuff.
Yeah. Now, of course, I'm an absolute sucker for some spare bits in a kit, and here we are with an entirely other optional build for this unit.
Ils sont très jolis.
Revenant Seekers.
Dans ce schéma, c'est vraiment très joli.
Yeah. So there's two different ways to build this kit.
Parfait.
The spite itself is it kind of stays the
Il y en
same.
a qui veulent déjà aller taper.
Different in this aspect. So you can see, rather than having a helmeted head,
ils ont l'air d'avoir.
These guys have got.
On n'est pas sur de la lance de cavalerie, mais bon,
ils
sont magnifiques.
And the way that these seekers work is that they
c'est bizarre qu'ils soient deux d'ailleurs.
And they harvest the
merci
soul
pour le sub.
So in lore terms, these guys are kind of flitting between like fights that are happening and kind of capturing all the kind of soul essence, so they can make sure it doesn't get corrupted or fall to chaos, and kind of take that back to the heart of life to be reborn as new Sylvaneth. But in game terms, what it means is you can basically soak up power from battles that are happening nearby and use it to do cool stuff, and you can regenerate nearby units. So they are a really useful tool to have in a Sylvaneth army that give you yet another way of keeping units alive and regenerating models into units.
Merci les gars, vous régalez, vous avez lancé un train de hype. Merci infiniment, vous êtes adorables. Merci Karnak, merci Shakmam.
It's more about synergizing with the rest of your army, whereas the Lancer unit is just about
trop gentil.
Zip across the battlefield and kill that thing.
Sounds great. I love the idea.
Bon, en gros, ça traverse le battlefield et ça tabasse. Vendu par 3 avec un héros à monter, double pack de 2. Ah, c'est bien vu ça. C'est bien vu. Ah, c'est très bien vu. Genre, on est sur de la cavalerie d'élite. Ah, il y a moyen.
Of course, these things wouldn't be complete without a battle tome.
Merci infiniment, Swinepper.
With a new
petite tristesse quand même de voir
Sylvaneth have waited quite a long time
de voir les mêmes artworks.
And obviously we've got lots of new units that have joined the Sylvaneth,
not
just the ones that have featured in this particular update, but also you've got things that joined us during the events of the Broken Realms. So there's a lot more stuff.
Moi, ce que je veux voir maintenant, c'est ça. Des petits Squig.
But also you can expect all the things that you've seen of recent battle tomes, so things like Path to Glory, and the way that the army kind of works and synergizes. I think it's fair to say that Sylvaneth haven't been tearing up at the top of the Age of Sigmar meta in the last few months, but this is like a whole new rebirth for them. You can build your army in a lot of cool new ways. Even some of the units that you recognize and have in your army already will work in different ways and be able to synergize with lots of the new stuff.
Ça me le clown. C'est pour moi coiffé.
Fantastic.
Fallait en faire un truc à l'endroit là.
If you are a fan of the
Allez, cornes. L'important c'est les règles à l'intérieur. Honnêtement, je trouve qu'on n'a pas à se plaindre des BTV3. Ils sont tous très bien écrits. Seule petite doléance, comme je le disais dans la dernière review, c'est plutôt ce qui concerne la partie Bone Splitters, où on était un peu triste. Sinon, top. On va écouter un peu ce qu'ils disent.
No, they're pretty close. They're closer than you might think.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Right. Well, we of course must continue ever onwards, so we will join you after this.
Ah. Oh. C'est qui lui? C'est quoi cette bannière? Oh! C'est une... Au nom de l'élu éternel.
I absolutely love the Ogroids that we've seen so far.
Ah, ils sont beaux. Hein.
More is always a good thing.
Ils sont énormes.
Here we are with Ogroid
J'avais pas vu la bannière.
Yeah, so we know there is
Oh,
a
elle est
new
splendide.
Slaves
Honnêtement,
of Darkness book on the
ils se
horizon.
donnent de
and
plus
this
en
is one of
plus,
the,
hein, sur les-
feature which
sur
chapter
les
today to have
peintures.
a closer look at these guys. So we've
Wow,
seen
petit chaos
Ogre
universel
before. We
dessus.
saw them for the
Ah,
very
c'est
first
canon.
time in Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, where if
That's
you
right, yeah.
went all the way through the Silver Tower, you'll know that
Miniature
the,
donc Beast of Chaos.
the
Non,
Minotaur
c'est
at the heart of the
Minotaur, pardon.
dungeon was
Non,
an
non,
ogre
a priori il y avait marqué, tu vois, Slave to Darkness, et
thaumaturge
c'était marqué
who,
au
threw
nom de
fireballs
l'élu
at you
éternel,
and
donc
turned things into
plutôt
horrors and stuff like
côté
that.
arcade.
Distinctly Zinchian feel.
Yeah.
Le BTO que c'est pas
And
full
then we
niveau.
also saw one in Warcry
Équilibrage en vrai.
in the shadow of the Varanspire, where
Petite
he was
doléance.
marshalling Archeon's armies. But now in the new
Mais les
Slave to
flics sont
Darkness book, they're kind of
splendides.
revealed as being this kind of entire sub-faction almost that sits within Archeon's wider forces. So from a lore perspective, they've got quite a fun narrative. So these guys used to have a
ils ont l'air vachement narratifs,
empire in the realm of beasts, and were actually allied to the destruction gods Gorkamorka.
Really?
But they sort of they had an empire, but you know Gorkamorka is a little bit of a not the best god for people who have an empire. And
apparemment ils se sont fait casser leur maison par Gorkamorka. Étonnant.
Ogres and orcs and things like that, and a rampaging war
Narratif,
rolled through
mais
bits of their empire
dans ta
and
tête.
destroyed most of it. So they were pretty mad actually with all of their erstwhile allies and.
Makes you cross enough to change.
C'est vrai que vraiment les
absolutely,
premiers mots qui me viennent
So
à l'esprit
they were
quand je vois la
"Mm,
taille
you know
des
what, maybe
haches,
we
c'est
picked the wrong
vraiment
side." And as their empire was crumbling and assailed on all sides by
Poésie,
former allies and greenskins, Archeon showed up and he was
Ouais,
like, "You
comme
know
ça,
what,
quoi.
guys? If you come onto my side, I'll let you build an empire.
Espérons qu'ils
just
seront
next
plus
to
jouables
the
que les deux autres
Varanspire,
droïdes.
and you can have all the land
Le
you
thaumaturge
want. All
était
you
quand
need
même
to
joué
do
dans
is
les
fight
listes à
for me
l'époque avec
and train my
en
armies
Archaon
to
Zinch
warrior elites like
par
you."
notre
And they were
ami
like, "Yeah,
Mr.
all right,
Chat.
So is that one of the things these do? Is
Yeah,
sort of help improve?
J'aime
the
beaucoup
story?
leur
They
sourire,
are,
ils
yes, these are
sentent
the marshals
joie de
of
vivre,
the,
ces petits gars.
of the Chaos
Ouais, t'aimes
Army, so
ça?
they're relatively senior in
Sauf
the
celui
the
devant,
forces
il a l'air
of
de faire un
Chaos.
peu la
That's
gueule.
pretty cool. And yeah,
On
these
a
are kind of
perdu
guarding
Victor.
some of the key points in and around the Varanspires of Chaos. So they fit into the lore of the Mortal Realms really nicely.
Ouais, c'est
They've
une
got
autre
this
sorte
kind
de
of
narration,
connection to the
quoi.
realm of beasts, and they kind of feel betrayed by its
On reste dans le partage, quoi.
by their former god and the greenskins, that they really hate the forces of destruction. But in their hearts, they're still definitely like beasts of the realm of Gur. This kind of
Excellent, j'ai
fallen
gagné un émoticône.
empire. And
Merci à vous.
What's quite nice about it, I think, is that is to see almost on like the other side of the culture of Age of Sigmar. So we've seen what happens to the.
Ils ont pas mangé assez de
humans
haricots.
have kind of retreated and gone back to.
Ouais, il y a moyen là.
Azir.
Mais ils ont mangé
Sigmar
pas
kind of
mal
looked
de-
after them. This is one of those
Ouais, peut-être
groups
des
that were sort
carottes.
of abandoned by their gods and had to kind
Pourquoi
of
c'est
fall
pas pour les hommes
They've got
bêtes?
Quite a kind of a nice tragic story.
Est-ce
Sounds
qu'ils auraient
great.
pas
Now, this
envie
kit,
de
the Ogroid Therodons
fusionner des
also
trucs?
has
Je
an
sais pas
alternate
trop.
option,
Honnêtement,
which you can see here. And for me,
Oh là là, les
I'm an absolute
close-up.
sucker for a round shield.
Les zooms,
There's something
pardon.
about it. You've got the Ogroid Myrmidon as well, which is already in the range and has a shield going on. They look incredible.
bouclier au clic,
Chat,
là.
two-handed weapons or shields. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. I think
Excellent d'avoir
usually,
donné
I like my
plusieurs,
two-handed
types
weapons,
de
but
cornes.
actually they look really cool.
Vous voyez,
the shields.
vous vouliez des
There's a
cornes, vous avez des
definite kind of
cornes.
ancient world aesthetic going on with these. They look almost
Il y a
like
3 nouveautés de cornes.
ancient Greek kind of phalanx-looking warriors, don't they? There's a definite kind of ancient.
On a quand même le
myth
retour
sort
de
of
la
aesthetic
shoot.
going on with these, which I quite enjoy.
C'est vrai. Ouais, ça
Pretty
compte.
interesting. I'd say this. It's a pretty even split with the two-handers being a little
Snitch,
bit more
le Scaven, je
judgmental,
sais plus
suggesting that
si tu avais
shields
trouvé le
might
nom,
in
c'est
fact be
Snitch.
cowards.
Snitch, c'est ça.
Wow.
Merci.
Okay.
But I guess as long as you're alive, you can pick who was
Yo!
the coward and who
Ouh,
wasn't.
le
right?
roi du fluff est
Yeah, I
arrivé.
mean, I'd imagine that Ogroid Therodons are definitely.
Ah, ils
not
sont beaux, hein, les
friendly
options d'armes.
units, so I
Grosse
would imagine
hache,
they're
épée.
probably
C'est
still
étonnant de
hitting
le voir,
people with the
l'épée,
shields pretty
ça
hard.
doit faire la taille de son
And if
tibia,
you
quoi.
imagine these guys stand
Mais c'était
about
quoi
twice
cet
as
espace au
tall
milieu
as
de
a
leur
Chaos
retraite?
warrior, the shield is probably weighs about half a ton, so you could, as an
C'est vrai que c'est
effective weapon,
bizarre.
it probably
Surtout sur
still
celui du
works pretty
milieu,
well.
c'est très,
That makes perfect sense to me.
très ouvert comme espace.
Yeah, a really cool kit. On the way with the rest of Slave to Darkness, we saw a few of those last week. We know that there's a battle tome on the way. We know they're getting a shiny new demon prince.
Of course, yeah, we saw that.
Ils ont montré un prince démon.
there's a lot of cool stuff on the way for Slave to
Sans
Darkness.
aucune pression de Vic.
Wonderful. And I guess we can just sort of keep our weather eye on the
Bon, honnêtement,
encroaching.
si on s'arrête là,
I've got to
si on
admit,
s'arrête
I know
là,
more about
on
them
a
all.
ce
I'm
à
quite
quoi on s'attendait.
It's fun, isn't it?
The Ogroids, yeah.
The other thing that's quite nice is
Modulo,
all
le
the ones
contenu,
we've seen
c'est-à-dire
already.
du
So like
Sylvanette,
the
du
Thaumaturge
Scaven,
still fits
et,
into that, so he's still
on
kind
va
of
dire un
part of-
rattrapage de ce qui avait déjà un petit peu fuité.
But with the
Ah non, vous attendez
Thaumaturge and
plus.
the Myrmidon, you've got the
Ligne de
hero
collage
types
comme les
and
autres,
the
You can make
Fire
them
Slayer.
look quite nice.
And I like a tragic backstory.
No one does.
C'est
It
plutôt
excuses
un faux
If
Terrible
you like
épée.
tragic
Terrible.
backstories, then you've come to the right place with Warhammer. We've got all the
Bah,
tragic.
j'allais regarder, mais en fait, il est plus là.
Very good. Right. Okay. So
Toujours
Um,
plus.
we've had a look at the forthcoming Skaven with a new battle tome and a fantastic new Deathmaster. We've seen a whole bunch of Sylvaneth.
Oula, ils font un bilan là.
Some new Ogroids for the Slaves to Darkness, which we kind of already knew were on the way in terms of Slaves to Darkness. So it's nice to see they've got some awesome new models. How about something which is the start of a very long build-up?
That sounds fun.
Should we have a video?
Oula la 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 la.
Destiny calls. With this sacred token, you are bound by oath to carry Sigmar's light and build a sanctuary against the darkness. There is no turning back now. The coin Malleus chose you. And by your deeds, or by your example, the Dawnbringer Crusades will see your people triumphant.
My favourite comment in the chat was by far, "Hey, I have
God's
that
King.
coin."
Long
So
build
that was
up.
pretty cryptic. So we can tell you a bit more about what that means exactly.
Ah ouais,
So,
c'est cryptique.
Since the start of Age of Sigmar, we've seen all sorts of cool stuff. We've seen like gods and monsters and great big, all sorts of cool epic events across the realms. But one of the things that's been a little bit conspicuous by its absence
C'est une
is
nouvelle armée,
the
le
presence
token.
of like normal human level people. So one of the things we're announcing today is that the Warhammer Studios have embarked on what will be one of the most ambitious
Oh là 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 là.
faction projects for
Il
Age of
remplace
Sigmar
Kos
since
par une pièce.
the launch of the game, basically, which is the kind of reinvention of the free cities and the cities of Sigmar within the Mortal Realms. So we're going to see
Putain, ça démarrait bien
over the
pourtant,
next
là.
few kind of months, we're going to follow the progress on the community site and elsewhere of the development of humans, basically, in Age of Sigmar. So the thing that you can see on the screen there is the God King's coin that is given.
Coin Malleus.
Développement des
That's
humains
right,
dans l'âge de
coin
Sigmar.
Malleus, or Malleus, you say tomato,
Quite.
call the whole thing off. That's given to the warriors and the people that set out from the cities of Sigmar into the mortal realms to found new cities, seeds of hope, new settlements out in the wilds, basically.
Bien vu.
And that's the kind of the theme, the recurring theme of these forces of humans that set out into the realms. So you can imagine that these places are full of, you know,
Bien vu,
flying
nouvelle
sharks
cité Cities of
and
Sigmar.
orcs and
Pas mal, ça.
gargants and monsters and demons and gods and all sorts of horrible stuff, so that the humans kind of band
Bon,
together.
par contre, les gars, va
incredibly
falloir
brave
changer le
little
fond là parce
crusades
que
of
c'est un peu
mankind
statique.
that set out, not always necessarily protected by
Autre nouveauté.
Stormcast warriors, sometimes just on their own, and they've got to battle against
On s'est
these
fait troll.
horrible odds.
Non, mais ils ont
One of the nice
dit
things
quand
in
même des
Warhammer
nouveaux
40,000 is
settlements
you can see
in the
the
Cities of
setting
Sigmar,
through
etc.
the eyes almost of things like guards.
Et le
You can see how
développement
horrific
des
the
humains
setting
dans les
is.
royaumes
And that's
mortels.
one
Donc,
of the
il y a quand même un
perspectives
truc.
almost that's been missing from Age of Sigmar is that, like, what's it like to be a human? What's like, how does that feel? How do those armies actually? How do you even start to fight against
Ça serait
demonic
énorme.
incursion when all you've got is swords and steel and courage, and that's what this faction.
Je sais pas si
Yeah,
c'est
absolutely.
exactement les
provides
mêmes
that sort
coins
of
qui ont
level
été
of
donnés au
context
moment de
for
Dominion.
Sort of the awfulness
C'est
of
les
their
mêmes.
position and the difficulty
C'est vrai
of the
qu'ils
world
étaient
that
très
they live in,
Sigmarites,
when you
mais
can suddenly see it at a ground level
la
view.
dernière
A
fille
little
d'humain,
bit of, sort of
la
insight
dernière
on this
fille
coin,
d'humain, je
the
crois que
Warhammer
c'est
Studio played
le
the long
père et sa
game with
fille
this because,
Hunter, si je dis pas de bêtises. C'est pas si vieux.
If you pre-ordered Dominion back in the day,
Ok.
you got the coin Malleus set, like objective marker sets.
Yep.
And
T'as tout loupé, Ben.
they knew back then that this was the sort of the equivalent of the God King shilling.
Faut les prévenir là dans le
to
chat
give to people who
que
were signing
on les
up
voit pas là
to
les copains.
join his mortal armies. And
Pardon,
that comes full circle,
PLS.
we get to see like, the
Coins
beginning
for
of the
pays,
Genesis for
Chaos
us,
Dwarf.
seeing what these armies look like,
Les Storm
and
Coins.
what the people of the cities of Sigmar will be. For me, when I saw this video for the first time, I was like, "Ooh,
C'est
they've made
marrant.
a nice long game here. I like it."
It's nice as well because the narrative for
Ça
this
manque dans le
is set
peuple
up,
AOS des
as you
humains
say, at the
qui
start
sont
of
aux
Dominion,
abois.
and if you've been following the narrative of Age
Oh.
of Sigmar and reading
Il y
the
a quand même
stories,
des couloirs, non,
you'll
quasiment.
know, you'll have a sense of maybe what's coming. But this faction is going to be basically the payoff towards
Dernier humain hors jeu
later on in
secondaire
this edition,
maintenant.
basically. So if you're following Age of Sigmar and you kind of you're in on the story, this
C'est
is
à
gonna
moi
be
de poser la
very
question
rewarding
maintenant, c'est
when this
chacun
faction
son
shows up.
tour.
You'll be like, hey, it's
J'ai eu un
these guys.
éclair.
This is how I imagined it to be. But we've not just got complete speculation for you today. We've got some pictures to share as well, just to prove that we've actually started work.
Stuff is
on
happening.
Ils ont des
some
petites
models,
photos de
so-
preview à nous montrer.
In the plastic mines of the
Yeah,
Warhammer
Oh,
Studio.
ça, on les connaît, là,
complete
c'est
models
les
today, but
flagellants,
just to give
ça.
you a sense of what we're looking at. Here's some
Je me
of the
souviens
kind
encore de
of
Brindle dans sa
iconography and
vidéo qui
heraldry
fait,
and
pour
the kind of visuals, I suppose. And it's already you start to get a sense of this is going to be a faction with very much its own aesthetic and its own.
Non, c'était une
visual
blague. C'est vrai qu'il
style.
n'y a pas,
This isn't
il y
going
a
to
pas
be
que
just
des humains dans
the
l'ordre.
empire of the old world
Il y a beaucoup d'elfes.
reinvented or anything like that. They're going to
Ah non,
feel
c'est une nouvelle boîte
grounded
de
in
base
the
avec
realms,
des
and you can
causes
see,
dedans. Oula, t'es
some of
loin.
the kind of styles and things. So there's lots of recurring
Autour des
symbols. You
cultes
get the
de
idea
mort.
that the twin-tailed
Ah.
comet is still very much present. You know,
Ouais.
the name of the god
ça
King
paraît gros.
Sigmar. They are quite macabre in the sense
D'ailleurs,
that, you
quand
know,
tu
if you're
quand le
a crusade of
aux
mortals
elfes,
setting out into the mortal
c'est
realms, you're
impossible.
probably
J'ai
surrounded by
essayé.
death on a daily
Promis, j'ai
basis.
essayé.
So there's plenty of symbols
Il
of
est
skulls and
hermétique.
stuff. They're going to feel very Warhammer.
Yeah, it's still morbid in all the right
Oh
ways.
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. It's but I think the nice thing about
Il
humans
lance
in
leur
Age of Sigmar
marque
is
de
that there is that
Playmobil.
little spark of hope. Like they are setting out because they genuinely believe that they can find somewhere in what is literally a hellscape.
Après
to
avoir
carve
volé
out a
les âmes à
future, a
Nagash,
city, a settlement.
Sigmar lui vole
Even
son
if
look.
most of the Crusades end in like horror and disaster, there is something really compelling about the idea of just
ça a l'air
a
compliqué
human
quand même.
or a
Il est
band of
têtu comme un
humans
daoui.
setting out, like with hope in their hearts and steel in their hand to take on the forces of the realms.
Now, I'm a sucker for some speculation, and I spent a little while
speculate away,
looking
yeah,
at this
go
picture
for it.
here.
Vu la façon
and
dont ils ont formulé
I
les
think
choses,
that
ça a l'air
we might have
d'être
a sense of scale on a few of the
dernière chose
pieces,
qu'ils veulent nous
assuming
montrer.
that they're scaled to each other based on so the top center you've got that Sigmar.
Là, s'ils veulent,
sort of,
normalement,
thing
quand
with
on fait ce
sort
genre
of
de
the
truc,
2
on doit
points down
finir en apothéose.
under the S and the
C'est-à-dire
R.
un truc
I think
pas
the thing to the
prévu,
sort of lower
auquel
right of that is a
personne ne
shoulder
s'attend.
pad.
Donc là,
That's my
normalement,
guess.
s'ils sont
so
bons,
like, you know,
ils
I
vont
don't
nous
know,
balancer
sort of
un
a
truc,
suit of
genre
armor equivalent to something like
nouvelle figue de Nagash.
an average soldier might wear if they're quite well armed. And I think that scales against, if you look sort of down towards the bottom right, there's a skull with like a hook around it. It's almost the sort of thing you might carry around if you were carrying some sort of morbid offering. It's got the, so I think
fin des
that
temps
what we're
de
looking at are
retour.
things, that skull and that
Il
shoulder
ne pourra
pad
pas jouer
gives a
elfe à
sense
cause
of
de toutes les rancunes
scale
qu'ils ont
for the
eu.
rest
Ouais, il
of
peut
things,
pas
is
jouer une
my
armée
hope.
qui a encore des
At which point,
rancunes
these are
dans le
tiny, very
Damastrog.
intricate.
Yeah.
And what we're going to have is some extremely
Pour 40K, ça finit par rien du tout.
baroque and fascinating looking models.
Ouais, un petit Malarion pour
with a
finir, c'est pas
very
mal.
strong gothic
Ou des petits nains
overtone
du
to them,
chaos,
which
ou un petit
excites
truc quoi.
me.
Yeah.
Une
I
petite
think
news.
we'll explore a lot more of these on the community site as we approach the release, and we'll obviously, when we're ready to show full miniatures and things, we'll share them with you. But you can start to already see that they're going to look aesthetically very different from something like the Stormcast. There's a very made, created, kind of beaten, forged look to these rather than the kind
On
of
peut dire qu'on n'est pas dans le look
godlike
Stormcast.
aesthetic proportions of
Faut le
the
concéder.
Stormcast, which look, you know,
Genre Malarion,
magic.
Maléfique, ouais,
Yeah,
sortie quoi.
absolutely.
Une petite info.
A few sort of comments and things in the chat. There were a couple that I wanted to grab on, but it's just flown past. Oh no, where's he gone? It was a great comment. And
Ouais, un petit
oh,
Orion.
yes, so I agree. I think some of these might be banner tops.
They could well be banner tops.
I totally
yeah.
agree with that. Somebody asked, do we think that there might be non-humans within the Cities of Sigmar or whatever this faction is eventually called?
So I think we'll find out much more about it. I think that there probably will be some representation from the various different factions, but
Okay.
the
Il demandait s'il allait y
the
avoir des
drive, I
non-humains
think,
dans
is to
la
show
nouveauté
how
Cities of
humanity
Sigmar.
fits in. So I think humans will very much be the front and center of the faction, and
Et donc il lui répond
the
qu'il y
Cities
aura
of Sigmar
peut-être
obviously are vast and
quelques âmes
multifaceted
perdues.
and encompass
Mais
all
surtout
sorts of
de
different
l'humanoïde.
places across the realms that can have, you know, populations drawn from all sorts of different factions.
Ou au pire
But
dire
the
qu'ils seront
thing
les
that-
BT Automne,
the
annonce
thing
du
Age of
royaume du
Sigmar
prochain
is
MDG.
missing
Peut-être
really
ça
is that kind
serait
of
pas
human
mal parce que le MDJ historiquement,
So
si je sais plus,
that's
c'est juillet,
that's going to be
juin.
at the heart of it.
J'ai un trou de mémoire.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what remains to say about this is it's a long-running project, and a bit like the Warhammer community team did with Sisters of Battle some time ago. This will follow a similar pattern, and we'll keep you updated with
Manuel du général.
Should be very exciting.
Yeah, the reason we're telling you about it early is because we're quite excited about it. Really, it's because it's a very ambitious project, and we want to kind of take you on the journey with us to show you how this faction comes into being, so you can.
Ils sont longs les
understand
copains,
a
vous
little
êtes
bit
longs,
of
vous
that
êtes longs, vous êtes longs.
and get excited
Montrez-nous vos
along with
têtes.
us, because the Warhammer studio is
Je
just.
sais pas pourquoi
super psyched
à
about
chaque
this
fois ils nous
album.
font le
It's gonna
coup,
be
ils mettent
really
un
cool.
screen figé et
Yeah,
ils parlent.
absolutely.
Ah,
Well, that coin looks brilliant behind us. I've just seen this on the screen. This is a great start so far. I must admit, I'm quite excited. My army in the world that was, generally speaking, was.
alors je sais pas s'il a dit c'est un bon start.
Maybe a return to that sort of living the life
C'est
of
un
the
bon début, mais
everyman.
je sais pas s'il parlait d'un bon début
Knows,
pour ce qui est à venir ou un bon début
Stormcast, I can see a thing coming
pour les
up.
reveals d'aujourd'hui.
Right. So we are by no means done. Our next topic, if you are into match play, will be of great
We are by
interest to
no
you
means
because coming up very soon,
Ah bah voilà,
we have
suffisait de demander.
the new General's Handbook for Pitched Battles.
Oh
Eddie,
là là,
give us
regardez.
the lowdown.
Cool.
On le
So
connaît, lui.
yesterday we announced the next season
C'est un
of
trogot.
match play for Warhammer
C'est un troll de
40,000.
pierre.
We are doing the same again for
Oh,
Warhammer
là, là, là,
today.
là.
This will set out the match play scene effectively for
Season
the
1, il y a
next
marqué.
6 months plus of
Donc
of
là, c'était
Age
une
of
saison à
Sigmar.
blanc.
And it contains the sort of stuff you'd expect it to contain. So there's some themes that are worth exploring. So the first one is that this has got a lot of battle plans in. There are 12 battle plans in here. 6 of them are relatively generic battle plans that you can use however you want. And then 6 of them are themed very much to the setting of this particular General's Handbook, which is still set within the realm of beasts, but in a different location within the realm of beasts.
Ok, donc on est
So,
toujours dans le royaume de Gur, mais à un
the
autre
last
endroit.
few months we've been we've been in a place which is full of monsters and large beasts. So if you've been playing competitive match play for Age of Sigmar, you'll know that you had lots of things that either gave you bonuses against monsters or made your monsters better, or if you had a spell you could literally turn yourself into a monster.
Sure.
The next season of Warhammer Age of Sigmar is much
bien
more
vu, Soun,
focused on battle line infantry. So if you've got a force which is very
Allez, allez,
heavily
c'est maintenant qu'il
dependent
faut
on
voir des
things
trucs.
like
Regardez bien,
your
regardez
basic
bien.
troopers, you want big blocks of units.
Oh,
There'll be lots of
Battle
things that give your guys bonuses. And the idea is that the troops have now been
C'est un
in the realm of
Tizard.
beasts for months, if not years, on campaign. They're all veterans now.
Normalement,
of
là, il y a toujours
the
un mec
realm of
qui
beasts.
voit un
They
truc
know
dans
how
le
to kind of
fond,
handle
et tout
themselves
le monde se
and
dit
kind
oh,
of survive in a very
Il y a une
torturous
nouveauté.
environment. So they've all become elite, basically, to some extent. So your basic infantry get lots of bonuses, and all of the kind of season mechanics riff off the idea of either buffing your own infantry or debuffing the enemy's infantry, or giving you some kind of interesting mechanic about how your infantry interact with the rest of the
Ok,
battle.
donc apparemment une
That's
saison
not
qui
to say that if
tournerait
you've got
autour
something like a monster
de
heavy army, you
l'infanterie
can't still
peut-être.
compete.
Sure.
But
Plus que
the
des
focus moves, basically. So you can still absolutely play Age of Sigmar and compete with any shape of army. But
En fait, Fred,
the theme, I suppose, of the season is
Ouais.
all about your basic troopers.
Do you think
en
this
fait, je pense
might
que c'est la
usher
saison
in
1, parce qu'ils ont l'air
some
d'être partis
changes,
maintenant pour
so
des
if you
sorties
play
tous les
on
6
sort
mois.
of,
Et donc, du
organised
coup, vu que le
events
premier
and,
s'inscrivait
match
pas
play
dans
events and
ce
so on,
roulement,
do
je
you
pense
think this
qu'ils
will
ont
usher
décidé de
in
dire
some changes to
ok,
the typical
on va
armies you're
commencer
seeing
là, et maintenant tous les 6
participating in
mois,
those?
on a un shift.
So I think it definitely will.
Peut-être de royaume toutes les
And
2
that's
saisons.
one
du
of
coup.
the
À voir.
reasons that these match play books come out is to sort of shake
Est-ce
the
que
match
c'est
up a
en
little
haut
bit.
à gauche
So
C'est un.
what would be sad is if
C'est plus Luminarch, je sais plus comment ça s'appelle.
dominant army emerges
C'est le truc
that
qui met
never
3D,
changes,
3BM,
and
ça,
then
c'est une
everyone goes,
saloperie.
oh, but that's the best army. That's at the end, right? That's
Avec
the-
un battle
You've
match.
completed Warhammer at the end. That would be rubbish. So what the packs do is they go, okay, so
Ça, je
you've-
connais, là,
you've
ça
played
tire en
for
ligne
6
droite.
months using this pack. Here is a different set of scenarios and a different set of not kind of heavy touch but light touch rules that mix up slightly the way that these things play. So I'm already looking at things like my Auric army and all of a sudden things like Gut Rippers, which definitely aren't kind of like
God
ripping up
Rippers.
the meta right now. All of us in this season they become much more appealing, and lots
Okay.
of those units where you're like,
C'est marrant
actually,
parce qu'il dit que ça tourne autour de
these were
l'infanterie.
pretty
T'as
much
quand même
felt
sur la
like
table
armor
Nagash.
fillers, but now they feel like actually
Cap
they can
Morghast.
compete, they can do the job, they can claim the
Les
objective,
stalkers.
they can synchronize with the
Deux
rules of the season.
Gotisards.
I think it will.
Ouais, on a
certainly
vraiment
at the
misé
top end
sur
of
les
tables
petits héros
for-
piétons.
for Age of Sigmar. I think it will shake up the meta.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's nice to, when you've got large armies, as you know, many collectors do, they
Il
build things
récupère
up
les
over
membres
time and they
équipés.
enjoy experimenting with the
Tout
different
en haut à
units.
droite, on
It's
voit
nice
l'aile
to
de
have
quelque
a
chose à droite du
knowledge
soleil.
that the day and the sun may come round.
Non,
for that
c'est
unit.
ici là.
And I think it will evolve again, right? So that
crois
the
que
next
c'est un
pack will
arbre.
have a different theme, and
Ou alors j'ai
and
loupé
Warhammer
quelque chose.
will keep evolving and keep being fresh and exciting, and that's all good. But I think
La
if
gage
you're a
toujours
fan of
jouable, hein.
some armies will do very well
En
out of
OB.
this. So
Ouais, c'est un arbre Sylvanette. Ça, c'est les meilleurs moments. Tout le monde est
any
là.
army
Tac,
that
tac, on va trouver un truc. Ah non, ça c'est.
is rewarded for
C'est un
investing
caillou.
heavily in big blocks of infantry will enjoy this season. I think will do well. And a lot
Mais
of
t'as
those
arbre,
armies,
c'est
the
bon
ones
pour
that
les
aren't really,
Sylvanettes.
competing
On va voir s'ils arrivent
particularly
toujours à poser
well
leurs arbres.
in the meta for Age of Sigmar right now. So I think it will be really
gâche est à
interesting to see
pied.
what happens for
Ah ouais,
competitive.
carrément.
If you're more of a casual match player, which we know quite a lot of
Ah, c'est super Gotrek.
people out there like to play match play but don't necessarily want to compete at
Salut,
tournaments
Benoît.
and
That
things.
tends to be my jam.
I think that's a lot of people's jam.
Au
It's a
fond, entre
popular
Nagash
flavor
et
of jam.
Teclis.
You
Ah, c'est un
can
NES.
all of the
un
points for
petit
this,
sort
the
persistant.
updates for the points will be
Parle de ça.
available for free online as well. So if you'd rather just continue to play with the missions that you have in your core book, or you want to use a previous battle pack or something, you absolutely can
On sait qu'il y a
carry
des
on doing
figurines là
that.
derrière la brume. Non, on voit là, c'est
Again,
le...
as with Warhammer
le sol
40,000,
qui est craqué.
what you've got here is
Vraiment
a
au
book that
fond, mais sans doute
shakes
un
up
décor.
the match play competitive scene and makes it exciting and interesting to
Ouais,
join.
je pense que
So I think
c'est
it's
pas grand chose.
It's pretty cool.
Sounds awesome. I know the opportunity to sort of go to those events a few times a year and sort of meet all your friends and roll dice in sort of anger's not the right word. A competitive spirit is quite the high point, so it's good that everybody's sort of singing from the same hymn sheet. Sign me right up. Okay, so we have one more video to play for you.
Oh!
Shall we proceed to that and see how we get along?
Aïe, ça régale.
Uncommonly tall for a Dwardin.
Oh!
An adventurer, an engineer, a wit, and a self-proclaimed genius.
Oh, il est beau.
Trekkie Flint, captain of the Ailsling, known throughout the sky shoals of Acromia. Say his name and make half a tavern starry-eyed, while the other half mutters about how much money he owes them.
A soul-blight vampire who accepted the curse as his people and kingdom fell to chaos. He now roams the realm of death and beyond. Caedo Ezekiel, a wanderer who has outlived the memory of the age that made him, seeking retribution and salvation for the ones he failed.
Aïe, ça fait plaisir. Superbe fig.
Something quite different.
C'est une tige de Trudès.
New heroes that until today I was unfamiliar with.
Bon.
Eddie, who have we got and what's the story here?
Ils ont retenu la leçon.
Yes,
Ils
so
finissent
two
par une bonne
new
note avec une
characters
nouvelle
that are
figure.
inspired by what will be two
Il est
new
magnifique, ce
series
Caradon.
for Black Library. So
Awesome.
this is a slightly different, I suppose, origination for how we normally get new heroes. Usually they drop with alongside a new battle tome or a new edition or something like that. But these ones have been created a kind of in a combined effort between our Black Library teams and the teams of the Warhammer Studio, and they are basically characters that we'll get to follow through a series of adventures in Black Library
pas
stories.
grand chose en plus pour en faire un truc pas forcément steampunk.
Sigmar, and they give us
Ouais,
new
ça fait plaisir.
and
Ça fait plaisir ces petites figues
also
à la fin comme ça.
Yeah, absolutely. So Trekkie Flint here is an adventuring Caradron overlord, right? And he's we're going to get to learn his adventures in his very own book.
Petites règles. Montrez-nous le mec de la mort là, s'il vous plaît.
The Argonaut's Oath, a Trekkie Flint novel by, frankly, Black Library staple and extremely popular author Guy Haley. I can't think of a better choice for writing stories about Dwardin sort of faring the aether skies and looking for trouble in all the wrong places.
Yeah, so I think there's the two things to be. Well, there's lots of things to be excited about, but I think if you are a fan of Black Library fiction and the Mortal Realms, I think you can look forward to two really cool new series.
C'est bizarre de sortir un truc à boire de couleur transparente au moment où il y a des nains, mais c'est beau.
From Black Library, so you can download the ebooks if you want to from
Le
blacklibrary.com.
pistolet du nain, il ressemble à une cornemuse.
Trekkie Flynn's first book is The Argonaut's Oath, which, as you said, by Guy Haley.
Il me semble qu'il y a déjà des oiseaux mécaniques sur certains Caradons.
Sometime.
Yeah.
Encore des livres pas en français. Ouais, mais il y a toujours Wolf qui va nous faire cette splendide traduction.
And has written a few Age of Sigmar stories too. So a story that's in good hands.
C'est vrai qu'il fait
and I think
le vampire fait
Argonauts
pas
and
humain.
Caradons generally is quite a interesting perspective for Age of Sigmar because
je viens de rendre hommage à mon
do
argent
get to travel around. You get to see lots of bits of the realm. They've got quite an interesting mercenary take on the how they approach life in the Mortal Realms and battles. So hopefully we'll get to see lots of cool stuff.
And this isn't the first place that Trekkie Flint has turned up. It's worth pointing out.
Vraiment un peu noir.
A call out for
assez fin et lancé. Tu me diras, le mec c'est un vampire.
These works.
Quand même de quoi, mais...
There are some short stories, e-shorts on the Black Library website. You can go and check out right now if you wanted to, which deal with Trekkie Flint. There's one called The Lost Carrot.
Montrez-nous notre dernier vampire lord.
For example, which sort of introduces the character and lets
Trop jeune pour boire de l'alcool, exactement.
For me, any chance to get to see the Mortal Realms
mais je trouve qu'il faisait pas
perspective of individual characters is great. And then if the models to accompany them, that's so much better. I got to be honest, when I saw these, I immediately my heart went off in the directions of these would be cool characters for like soulbound adventures and things as well. So
they will also have rules in Age of Sigmar as well. So
il a quand même une esthétique particulière.
If you aren't following the stories, A, you're missing out, but B, you definitely can still use these great models in.
C'est vrai qu'il a des oreilles assez,
so the
assez
other
pointues.
character we're going to follow is Kadar Ezekiel, the Hollow King. So this is a
oreilles.
soul blight vampire. And this
un
is
elfe,
very
c'est
much
obligé.
the kind of anti-hero-esque character
Il est
in
beau.
a new series that's going to be penned by John French,
Poncho.
who is readers may know from
Même le
probably
socle,
the
hein, le
Horus
petit socle
Heresy,
scénique comme ça, c'est
I
splendide.
mean,
Hein.
you pay your money, takes your choice when it comes
très
to
bon.
where you know John French
très
from.
On va se régaler.
The Siege of Terror, but he was writing before that, and I
J'aimerais un perso avec une aptitude de fou.
And yeah,
Toujours.
you can count on this to be good. Again, there's
Pour le coup, c'est
more
assez fidèle à l'artwork.
Kato Ezekiel.
On dirait vraiment du Curse
I'll say that
City,
quick when
il
you're
fait
in a
très
hurry.
de Witcher, carrément.
Fiction, again, in the
Un
short
chasseur.
format, if you want to dip
T'as
your
loupé le
toes into the
début.
water right now, but a full novel, The Hollow King, is coming. And this guy really is your tragic
Il a
anti-hero
oublié
character.
d'aller à la
He's
salle,
the
le petit
king of a
Aragorn.
realm which has been sort of obliterated by the dark gods and now wanders the mortal realms alone, getting into
Bon.
hijinks of various sorts.
Je pense qu'on peut officiellement dire que
There's
c'est la
one
fin.
thing that,
Qu'est-ce
I
que
would
vous
say
avez
of
pensé de ces...
John French's
Bon, on va les laisser finir,
characterization
mais
is
qu'est-ce que
typically
vous avez
his
pensé
characters
globalement
have
de ces
got
petits
some real
reveals
depth to them. And I'm
Je
looking
pense
forward
que
to
tout le monde est
getting to
content,
know a soul
sauf
blight
les joueurs
Great Lord
Scaven.
hero from their
Ils sont un peu
perspective,
tristes de
I think
voir
that could
toutes
be
les
quite
sorties à côté.
Well, I think he's got experience with anti-heroes as well. So he has done the Araman trilogy. I think
course,
is
yeah.
maybe another great example of.
Ah.
Kind of you to describe Araman as
Oh,
a straight up
arrête de
baddie
voir
in
Game
my
Spirit.
opinion.
Ouh, ça veut dire qu'ils sont en
Just trying to
avance.
save his brothers.
Avec
What could be more
51
heroic?
personnes. Merci les gars, vous êtes
But
adorables.
yes, so I think
C'est
Warhammer
abusé
is a
pour les
difficult place
ratons.
to be a good guy in because pretty much everyone's a
Ils sont
villain.
belles,
in
hein,
some way, shape,
franchement,
or form. So I think
Je
you-
pensais
you
pas
had a
qu'on
nice
allait
line
avoir
there,
le
which
droit.
is
Et
just
bienvenue à tout
try
le
and be an
monde.
anti-hero doing good things.
Oh, bienvenue à tous les nouveaux.
Is the way to do it. But
Hermione
yeah, so it
Speed.
should be a compelling
Pouvoir
story
des bois.
about Soul Blight Vampire.
Merci à tous pour le
Obviously,
follow,
we had
pour les
a
petits
major
messages. C'est adorable.
release of Soul Blight last year and a very popular faction in Age of Sigmar, and we get another character.
Mais
to
écoutez,
add to the
moi,
mix.
je vais pas vous mentir,
A
je
super
suis
cool model as well. I
très
think,
content.
maybe a nice one for
J'espérais,
This is the show
merci
stealer
Sylvax,
from today.
merci
As
Xavkao,
we
merci
looked
Gorn.
through before we came on air,
Et j'espérais
I
surtout,
love models that just ooze
on commençait
of
à avoir
character
des infos
and
qui se
you
croisaient
want- even if
concernant
you're
Sylvanet
never
et
gonna
Skaven.
get the army. Whether or not I ever
J'espérais
collect a
surtout
Soul
des
Blight
nouvelles
Great
figues.
Lord,
Et
army, I
honnêtement,
couldn't tell you.
quand on
But
voit
I'm
les
all
figues
in
Sylvanet,
on Kaizo Ezekiel. I think that's awesome.
c'est quand même compliqué
Miniature.
d'être
And I
triste.
can
Hein.
just imagine him being like my sort of avatar in a
À bientôt.
soulbound role-playing adventure, or
Nice.
I don't know. I could find a way to jerry-rig some rules for him in.
On a des scarabées, on a un nouveau
Who
héros.
knows? There's a couple of interesting comments on.
Il y a des mecs avec des petites
I
ailes,
couldn't possibly
style
begin to
funérailles.
know whether you
Non,
can
franchement
use
cool,
these in,
Le héros
things like
Skaven,
Curse City.
c'est vrai qu'il est un peu
I think
tout
that'd be
seul.
pretty rad. So who knows what time
On peut
we'll
peut-être
show.
espérer qu'il
You
récupère
can
des copains
definitely use
bientôt.
them in Age of Sigmar. I think
Awesome.
that's the thing. They will have.
Mais
they will have
honnêtement,
more rules
non,
for-
honnêtement, c'est
for
très
use
cool.
in those
En plus,
games.
on a une nouvelle
Whether
pièce.
they'll go further into other games, I think we don't know yet.
Depends on their adventures, too, I suppose.
It does.
Very cool. Yeah,
Very
quite a lot of love
cool.
for that. I think it's a.
I think I like the Arcanaut more, just
Yeah.
because he's standing on.
Et la
like,
fille
I don't
Caradon
think cut back
qui
graph,
fera
but,
plaisir aux nains.
uh,
Donc les nains
I
sont
think it's the
contents,
tentacle. I
les
think
Skaven,
it's
les
like-
ratons
I want to
sont
know what
presque
he's
contents,
killed.
les humains sont
One
contents parce qu'on
presumes
leur a
it came from
vendu
something up
du
high
rêve.
as well. What in like
Les bouts de bois
the
sont
aethers,
contents.
the skies
Les
above
Death Guys
the
sont
mortal realms?
Monkey.
Is that big and
Les
has-
corneux sont contents
It
puisqu'ils
could
ont
be
eu
a
3 paires de
tongue.
cornes.
No, it's
Et-
got to be some sort of a
et
some
Monkey.
weird
Sky
Kraken.
Kraken.
Yeah, see,
Sky Kraken. There we
Pas
go.
grand
That could
monde,
be
hein.
IP. Who knows?
Les elfes sont
But,
presque
I
contents
love
parce qu'ils ont
the,
récupéré
the
une
Arcanauts
sorte
weaponry.
de
They've got just like
d'elfes
that axe
vampires
that's
quoi.
just so
Les
over-
glooms. Non mais nous ça arrive. Eh,
It's got like an axe
Les
and
glooms,
it's
ils ont
also
quand même eu un
a
truc, hein.
harpoon, and it probably does some other stuff.
Ils ont quand
Maybe
même eu
opens cans.
un troll de pierre
Got
sur la
an MP
couverture.
player in it,
À
who
mon
knows?
avis, c'est pas
He's got his own
anodin.
heraldry as
Sur la
well. I quite
couverture
like
du
his
manuel du
sort of
général.
Anchor that looks almost
3
like
paires
a
de
lumber
cornes,
ship
ça
at the
fait
moment.
6.
Nice.
Je vois qu'il y a
So
des
there we are. We
mathématiciens
are a
dans
house
le chat.
divided in between Drecky Flint
There's
and
room in
Kado.
Warhammer.
Ah, c'est vrai, il y a pas eu de ça.
Quite so. Right.
Il y a même eu du
well,
Nurgle.
that brings us to almost the hour mark. It would be worth doing a recap of everything that we have.
Petit récap avec
we've
les
looked at,
copains
'cause
qui arrivent
there's
à
quite a
leur
lot,
Power
and
Mark.
I can barely remember back to 55 minutes
Destru.
ago.
Oubliez
So
pas.
we started off with
Rockgood Progot
the Skaven and
sur
the
la
new,
couverture.
announced Deathmaster.
Yep, very
a
cool
fantastic
model.
new plastic model coming
Il est
soon
fantastique.
for the Skaven and their entirely
vraiment
new
fantastique.
battle tome, which will include
Le jour où
all
ils vont nous
sorts of
refaire les
updates for
Skaven.
rules,
En plus, on est un peu
including,
sur de l'échine. Hein. Donc,
clan-based armies and everything.
si le clan échine est un peu remis au goût du jour, jours, on va se
Of
faire
course,
bien
that was
plaisir.
quickly followed by an absolute glut. I was trying to think of a plant.
Ça manque d'unique pour ma
Couldn't get
part.
there fast enough.
Côté
For the
Sylvanette, c'est pas
Sylvaneth,
mal quand même. Salut les BG.
but
Salut,
a cornucopia
Handbook.
nonetheless. So the Lady of Vines,
Ah, elle est
epic
incroyable.
hero from the lore of Warhammer Age of
Incroyable.
Sigmar. One of those great characters from
Ça,
when
c'est ça qui
the
va
storm
faire
of
commencer
Sigmar first
Sylvanette,
broke
les gars.
across the mortal realms. It's lovely to see her represented with her own miniature. And she will not be arriving alone. Incredible new Sylvaneth models such as the Gospel Archers, which are just the
je pense
scariest
que c'est
looking
mes
fairy
préférés, encore plus que les scarabées. Je suis content qu'on ait récupéré de la cavalerie.
Airborne cavalry units with the Spite Rider
Les Mortis
Lancers.
Engine.
And
je suis content qu'on ait récupéré de la cavalerie en Sylvaneth, mais eux,
of course,
ils sont incroyables.
They have their own battle tome wending its way
Ah
towards
ouais,
us.
oui, de la reveal.
But that is not all. Eddie told us the lowdown on the
les gros cochons qui serviront peut-être de Minotaur de luxe.
Joining the Slaves to Darkness. These are the fallen
ça continue demain. Ouais, demain je
an ancient
pense
empire
que...
now sworn to Archaon.
Ah non, ça va être trop compliqué pour moi demain, malheureusement.
Alongside lots of other
c'est
new
un
things,
sujet que je maîtrise moins dans tous les cas.
Absolutely.
Mais honnêtement, je suis très heureux.
I think two-handed weapons ever so slightly won out.
Mon compte en banque un petit peu moins parce que je vais pas vous mentir, il y a de grandes chances que je fasse du Sylvaneth.
Start of an extremely
exciting, vous avez une armée de Sylvaneth
sort of
quasiment
long build project
mais
as
peut-être
the
en mode
Warhammer
United
Studio
Style
has
avec
undertaken the work
full
of
cavalerie.
creating the cities of Sigmar.
Le rêve.
Il
faut que j'aille nourrir la famille, je vous abandonne pour le récap, bon appétit. À bientôt.
Battling in the mortal realms. And a
merci Sirtex.
of what the sort of imagery
désolé à tous ceux que j'ai oubliés, merci pour tous les abonnements, merci pour tous les follow. Je suis désolé, il y en a eu beaucoup, j'étais à fond, mon niveau de hype était trop élevé.
As we get closer to the release in the future.
Merci Odin.
We also
j'y ai cru.
The General's Handbook.
We're all over the place.
Raf's pressing all the buttons. You should see how excited he looks.
We got the General's Handbook, which is going to shake up match play for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The big news here is lots of new battle plans.
J'y ai vraiment cru.
Are going to get really good. But if you don't want to play at the top
La
end of
bonne annonce,
the
ça fait plaisir carrément. Ouais, la région PLS. C'est vite, ça fait vraiment King of War. Moi, je pensais faire une liste full char Stormcast, mais il manque un héros sur char.
And of course, then we got to these two new Warhammer Age of Sigmar heroes
avec scarabée géant,
with accompanying
avec
novels to get
dessus.
super excited about.
On est bon.
We have Drekkie Flint and his accompanying novel.
Un petit bouquin en anglais.
And then we have Kado, Ezekiel, and the Hollow King. An eponymous title, as it were. That was pretty rad. I'm not going to lie.
Voilà.
For day 2 of Warhammer Fest, we have seen some awesome stuff. Chat, what was your favourite thing? You've got a few minutes to bang in the thing that you've seen today that was your favourite. I will pick, using my entirely non-judgmental eyeballs, the thing.
Là, je
Ogroids
suppose qu'il faut écrire dans le chat.
There's a lot of Ogroid love.
Sylvaneth. J'école le concept des Ogroids sur des scarabées géants, je dépose mon brevet.
That's fair enough. Quite a lot of people are here for the Skaven. So, Eddie, your pick?
So I'm definitely going to get the Deathmaster.
Deathmaster,
you have Day 1 already, so day one purchase.
Allez, je prie peut-être qu'à la fin il y aura un teaser pour la refonte de quelques unités Skaven. Malheureusement, je crois que non.
There's a thing there. So the Alariel, I think, is one of the models that is like the best, one of the best models we've ever made that I don't own.
Really?
I think it's way up there. I think she's like one of the best things we've ever done.
Assez d'accord. Assez d'accord. Il a vu comme moi, il a vu Alariel qui était suivi par des petits poneys en scarabée.
I can feel
oh là 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 là.
Closing in on you right now. Kado is definitely my favorite thing of the day. I think we've been
des armées de cavalerie parce que les gens adorent la cavalerie. Et en plus, parfois on a peur de se lancer dans des armées parce qu'on dit on va avoir 2, 3.
This has been day 2 of Warhammer Fest Online 2022. We are not done yet. There are still 2 more days of Warhammer Fest Online to come. We are back tomorrow at 5 p.m. with, that's British time. There'll be stuff on the Warcom website. If you, I'll let you figure that out. But we're back tomorrow with what I think promises to be an incredible lineup. Genuinely, you'll love it tomorrow if you are into things like, Necromancer, Kill Team.
Yes, so that.
Warcry.
Yes.
Is that right? Is that it? Have I left something out? I feel
like
oh, holy moly. Yeah, guys, if you like the Middle-earth strategy battle game, actually, you're going to be like super psyched for what's coming tomorrow as well. So, if you are free on a Friday night and looking for some Warhammer excitement, please do come and join us for day 3 of Warhammer Fest Online 2022. We have been hosted by the excellent Raf, who has pressed all the buttons and made all the videos work. Notley, the Moderati, and keeping the chat clean and hoping making sure everything nice was made easier, I would imagine, by the excellent genial behaviour of the wonderful Warhammer fans. I have been ably co-hosted by Eddie, the man who knows all the stuff.
Là, il se félicite.
It's been a pleasure
c'était bien
to have you join us. Please come back tomorrow. We'll see you for day 3.
Please come back tomorrow. Honnêtement, plutôt refait. Plutôt refait. On va laisser la petite musique, elle est bien sympa. Je pense que de mon côté, on va partir gentiment sur... Ils sont fort games s'ils avaient prévu une armée sylvanette, c'est sûr. Ils sont fort games s'ils avaient prévu de ne plus faire de manuel général depuis 6 mois pour en sortir un nouveau. Ah bah merde, moi j'ai plus de son s'ils coupent leur son. Comment on fait? On va mettre... Non, c'était bien Warhammer TV. On peut pas trouver leur vidéo. Blablabla, blablabla. Où est-ce que je chope le nom de la chaîne là? Ah mais je suis con, c'est là. Voilà, comme ça on se prend l'intro. Et on est content. Parfait. Bon, bah écoutez, c'est bon, Sam va aller voir sur internet pour acheter du Sylvanette. Ah, c'est un peu l'idée. Mais d'abord... Oula, ça m'a l'air fort. D'abord, je me suis mis à avancer sur d'autres armées, pour l'instant d'autres projets. Mais très clairement, les Sylvanettes me font très envie. Merci, attaque. Petit coucou. Bon, écoutez les gars, moi malheureusement, je vais devoir retourner, puisque j'ai fui le travail comme un lâche, il va falloir que j'y retourne. Je vous propose de lancer un raid des enfers sur Planet Wargame. S'ils sont encore là, j'espère. Je pense qu'on peut les stalk. On va regarder s'ils sont bons. Écoutez la voix suave de Vincent.
On est là. Allez, on repart sur le site.
Voilà, il repart sur le site. Je vous propose d'aller les raids. Vincent est adorable. Ils sont 190. On va débouler à 250. Un max de bisous, un max de poutous. N'hésitez pas à suivre la chaîne ici avant de vous envoler. En tout cas, merci à tous. C'était un régal. On est monté à 350.
N'hésitez pas, j'aurais peut-être
délirant. Je vous remercie. Je vous souhaite.
Une chance au grattage, une chance au
D'abord, on va cliquer sur lancer le raid.
J'y connais rien à OS, dit Marco, mais ils ont toujours des figues incroyables. Il y a beaucoup d'audace créative.
Ah voilà, il faut mettre prêt à lancer le raid. Je compte sur vous, je compte sur vous. On monte à 150, 200. Allez, il faut cliquer sur rejoindre le raid. Bon, en tout cas, merci à tous. Alors, je vous kiffe, c'était trop cool. Je vous embrasse, je vous souhaite une bonne soirée. Et je vous dis
soulagement pour
à très vite en vidéo ou en live. La bise.